to introduce the whole topic of research design, let's recount this anecdote that I found in Edward R. Tufte's book, Data Analysis for Politics and Policy. In the book, Tufte recounts the story of a famous surgeon, a pioneer in the technique of vascular reconstruction, who delivered a lecture to medical students on the large number of patients that he claimed had been saved by the procedure. At the end of this lecture, a young student at the back of the room timidly asked, "Do you have any controls?" Well, the great surgeon drew himself up to his full height, hit the desk, and said, "Do you mean, did I not operate on half the patients?" The hall grew very quiet then. The voice at the back of the room very hesitantly replied, "Yes, that's what I had in mind." Then the visitor's fist really came down as he thundered, "Of course not. That would have doomed half of them to their death." God, it was quiet then, and one could scarcely hear the small voice ask, "Which half?" Now, as humiliating as that probably must have felt to this young student, the student was obviously onto something, and that's what this chapter is about. For example, let's focus on the surgeon, this famous vascular reconstruction surgeon. Why was the surgeon's claim about the efficacy of the surgical procedure not supported? Well, we've already seen in this book that he violated a basic principle of comparison. If he just operated on one set of patients and didn't withhold the surgery from another group of patients, he had no basis of comparison. He had no variation in his independent variable, which in this case would be the surgical procedure. What would the surgeon need to do in order to test for the efficacy of his procedure? Well, first, as we just said, he'd have to have a control group so he can compare results of, say, survival rates as the dependent variable between the two groups. But this chapter is about more than that as well. The test group is the group that receives a treatment such as the surgical procedure, the treatment of the variable that the researcher thinks affects the dependent variable. The surgeon did have a test group that was a group who received the surgical procedure. The surgeon believed the procedure, the independent variable, would affect survival rates, the dependent variable, but he had no basis of comparison. He needed, to begin with, a control group. This, of course, would be the group that does not receive the treatment. This would be the other value, if you will, of the independent variable. The control group provides a basis of comparison for the treatment group. We saw in the chapter on how you set up and test hypotheses. You must have an explicit comparison between groups that vary along values of the independent variable. The surgeon did not have a control group, a group of patients who did not receive the surgical procedure. Without this basic requirement, it's impossible to know whether the independent variable affects the dependent variable. Cannot be demonstrated with just a test group. The surgeon, and we in political science, if we could sort of be the surgeon writ large, if you will, have to come up with ways of dealing with, vanquishing, controlling for rival causes of the dependent variable. Other variables besides the independent variable might affect the dependent variable. You know, consider these examples and this anecdote again. Perhaps patients in the test group, those that receive the surgery, are younger or in better general health than patients in the control group. So let's say the surgeon goes back and tries to reform his procedure, and he picks and chooses the patients who will receive the procedure and picks and chooses those who will not. Well, it may be that there will be what is called a compositional difference between the patients who receive one value of the independent variable and those who receive the other value of the independent variable, in this case, receive or do not receive the surgery. To rule out rivals, this is the key point of the chapter, to rule out rival explanations, the treatment group and control group must be identical in every way except for the independent variable. And experimental designs guarantee that the test and control group from the beginning of the research are identical in every way, so that the only cause of any change in the dependent variable must be the independent variable.